let's just say you can, generally break up the energy systems into three, like aerobic, anaerobic, glycolytic, and then anaerobic, alactic.
Mhm.
And it's rare, to be honest. I mean, particularly at the NHL level, this is where I have all my data. It's rare to be really good at all three.
Right.
Okay, so like generally the the guys that are really good from an alactic and really good at anaerobic standpoint might not be as good from an aerobic standpoint, and vice versa. A lot of times, the guys that are really good aerobically don't produce a ton of power from an alactic standpoint. That's not a blanket statement because there's a few guys like Michael Backlund, um, guys I've worked with in the past, Michael Frolik, uh, guys like that. Like they're really good at all three, and that's
Right.
kind of like That's kind of like a unicorn. You don't see that very often. So I do think it like really depends on the individual what you're working on. Now, like in season, like especially at the NHL level, you don't have a lot of time to be training energy systems. So you're hoping that the practices are structured in a way from the coaching staff and you have a good relationship with the coach where you can help guide what those should look like, not tell the coach what to do, but say, if
Yeah.
you're using something like Catapult or whatever,
Mm.
these are the workloads that you would like to see or whatever it is you're looking at. So you're hoping that during the season, the on ice practice and games cover your bases. And that's not always the case. So like you said, if there's a guy that's consistently playing 5-7 minutes a night, you might look into doing some additional work. And you're right, I would probably in that case stick to more of the anaerobic side of things,
Mhm.
um, just to kind of top them up because that player that if they're in the lineup every night and is only getting 5 to 10 minutes of ice time, they're not benefiting like the guys that are healthy scratch that have extra conditioning at the end of the pregame skate that are getting that on top of that. So those are really, in my mind, those are the guys you really need to focus on, and backup goalie as well, in season. So in season, yeah, I would primarily stick to the anaerobic side of things. um, Small doses, just to, obviously playing in games is priority. So you want to make sure that they don't accumulate too much fatigue in that sense. So don't overdo it.
Right.
And then in the off season, it's completely different. I mean, usually they're coming in after a significant layoff. Well, it depends if their team makes the playoffs or how much time they have in between. But sometimes guys haven't trained in a month or more, and haven't really done any aerobic work in a while, minus their hockey practices during the season. So usually in the first phase of an off season, I would focus on kind of aerobic capacity, aerobic power, and work capacity. So that could include aerobic base, which I don't do a ton of aerobic base. I maybe do that for a week or two.
Right.
Um, Anaerobic threshold work and some VO2 max work. That first phase of that, that could be anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks long. And then those different, qualities and stuff vary as things go along. And also on top of that too, we have to remember that, the way I run things anyways is our movement sessions that I run with these guys. They're always, why are our warm-ups so long? Like it could be, 45 minutes plus. And I'm like, well, the first 10 to 15 minutes was your warm up. Now we're training. So we're working on
Right.
movement skills and do all that stuff. And like if you look at their heart rates during that movement training, they're pretty much in zone 2 the whole time. The heart rate's
Yeah.
140 and whatnot. So after that initial phase of like aerobic work, I think you're still, getting doses of that daily in the movement sessions anyways. Phase 2, I would probably move on to like your anaerobic power and aerobic power. So, this is where I would start to introduce some like alactic stuff, focus a lot on lactate production. So, how much, their ability to produce lactate, how efficiently can they produce lactate, and continue on with aerobic power. And then the last phase, kind of leading into training camp, working on, anaerobic power still and capacity. So that would include obviously the speed work, lactate production, and then you're adding in lactate capacity work. So how well can your body deal with like high lactate levels, buffering capacity, and things like that.
Yeah.
That in general, that's how I would structure it throughout the season. And in the off season, uh, it's not set in stone by any stretch of the imagination. But
Right. Yeah.
if I'm going on an athlete and I have zero data, if I'm not going to collect any bit of data, that's probably what I would do.
Yeah. I love that approach. And it's the first time I've heard